Good afternoon. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Gittin Daf Chavav, and we're starting at a Mishnah just 7 lines down on Chavav and Aleph. We are familiar that there are two parts to a get. There's the Tofes, the general broad information about a get, and then there is the Torah, which is the Ikar information of the get. And the Torah, the Ikar information of the get, includes the names of the bride and the groom, and it includes the name of the city, and it includes a date. And we want to know in this Mishnah, we want to know exactly how to structure such a template, or if even creating a template is permissible. And the Mishnah opens, Kosev Tofse Gittin. If a person would like to write the templates for a Gittin, they're writing the basic frame, but they're leaving blank lines. Tzarech sheyaniach, they need to leave space for makom ha'ish, umakom ha'isha, umakom hazman. They need to leave a space for the man, a space for the woman, and a space for the date. That way, much like the ksuvas that we see when they come with some blank lines, it's much faster and you're able to more rapidly sell these things instead of just writing them as people come up. You'll have a whole pile of shtaros of Gittin that are ready to go. And all that has to happen is that the Bezdin has to add in the names of the appropriate people and locations. And creating a template isn't only mutter for Gittin, says the Mishnah, but shtari malve as well, documents that speak about loans. Yes, you can write a template. However, you have to leave space. Tzarech sheyaniach makom hamalve, makom halove, makom hamos, makom hasman. You need to leave a place over for the person who's lending money, the person who's borrowing money, the amount of money that's being lent, and the date. And still, we can expand even more, not only by Gittin, and not only by shtari malve, but as well by shtari mekach with purchasing. And purchasing is, of course, different than a loan. And there the Gemara says, yes, you can write a template, the Mishnah says, but tzarech sheyaniach makom halokech, umakom hamocher, makom hamos, makom hasadeh, umakom hazman, all of these areas, the name of the buyer, the name of the seller, the amount of money, the name of the field, whatever the case may be, and makom hazman, the date as well. Then the Mishnah adds, seemingly out of left field, mipnei hatakana. We will soon see that this is relating back to the din of Gittin, that only by Gittin do we have this idea of mipnei hatakana, that there's a specific reason by Gittin why we were lenient to allow a template. We'll discuss that more in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda posel dechulan. Rabbi Yehuda didn't agree with any of these templating. He really felt that these things needed to be done on a per-case basis, and we'll be discussing this a little bit more. But if you take a look at Rashi, 1/3 of the way down, Dibur Hamaskal posel dechulan says, even if you were to template by leaving over the space of the key pieces of information, still Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't have it. And the Gemara then adds, the Mishnah adds, Rabbi Lazar machshir b'chulan. Rabbi Lazar did allow for templating, meaning you'd write everything but leave over blank lines. He was machshir b'chulan. Yes, you can do templates, chutz migitei nashim, with the exception of a get nashim, where you're not allowed to use a template, that the whole get has to be written lishma. That brings us to the Gemara. We're on Chav Vav, Amar Aleph, 1/3 of the way down. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, tzarech sheniach at makom harei at muter v'chol adam. There is a critical piece of a get, and the critical piece which wasn't mentioned in our Mishnah is that we need to leave a space that says, you, a husband referring to the wife, you are now able to marry anybody that you wish. And that's a key piece of information. Rabbi Lazar, this is broadly speaking like the sheet of Rabbi Lazar, the Amar Ede Mesira Karti, who is of the opinion that Ede Mesira are the most critical ones. And as we've seen already a number of times, along with the Ede Mesira being the critical machriya for a get, it also means that the get has to be written lishma, and therefore we can't pre-write the line of harad mutaris b'chol adam. It has to be written only in specificity for this particular woman, and therefore it was a blank line as well. So he's just adding one more blank line for the get. And really, because those who hold of Ede Mesira Karti, that the transfer of the get to a woman is what affects the get, is what brings about an actual krisus. So therefore, in such a case scenario, we need to make sure that it's written lishma, v'tzricha, and really we need to know, we need this shita of Shmuel as well. So the Gemara doesn't really present all of the Mari Makomos in the same place, but this shita that we just saw of Shmuel, that Ede Mesira is Karti, he said it 2 other times. He said it once on Daf Chaf Aleph in regards to a case of not being allowed to write a get on Mechura L'Karka. He said it once on Daf Chav Beis, and he says it again here. So when the Gemara says v'tzricha, it assumes that our memory is perfect. Mine is not. I had to look all of this up, and as we'll see in the Gemara, some of it's painted over here. But when the Gemara says V'tricha, halfway down on Chavav and Aleph, it's really asking, why is it that Shmuel had to tell us 3 different times that we hold like Rabbi Lazar that Edi Mesira Karti? So the Gemara says as follows. If we had only the first case scenario from Daf Aleph, a case where we said that a get can't be written on something that's mechubar lakarka, maybe behahihu deikal ukma Rabbi Lazar. Maybe only in that case would we say that we hold like Rabbi Lazar that Edi Mesira is karti. Diktani, because over there we learned in the Mishnah Daf Aleph that ein kosvin. First we said you're not allowed to write something on, you're not allowed to write a get on something that's mechubar lakarka. And then in the very next line of that Mishnah, the Katani, we had taught Kasvo that if you did it was still kosher. And there we were able to explain, well, it depends what you wrote. If you wrote the part that wasn't important, the Tofes, no big deal. But if you wrote the Torah, that is going to be a problem. And that is like the Shita of Edi Mesira Karti, because it shows us that Lishma is required. Aval Seifa, but the example from Daf Chav Beis, the Katani, where we saw She'ein Kiyum Haget Ela B'Chosmav Ema Reb Meir, perhaps that line where it says that it's about the Chasimas, perhaps that is Reb Meir, Damar Ede Chasima Karti, and the rest of the Mishnah is also Reb Meir. Therefore, over there we needed another line of Shmuel to offset that Havamina, that the Mishnah on Chav Beis, which is the second reference of Shmuel, that the Mishnah on Chav Beis was all Reb Meir. No, it's not all Reb Meir. The rest of it is Rebbe Lazar, and therefore that's why we needed the second one. V'yashmin and behahi. If I only had the Mishnah from Daf Chav Beis, then hahi nami deikal ukma Rebbe Lazar. Maybe only over there we were able to establish the rest of the Mishnah like Rebbe Lazar. Aval ha, but that's not true everywhere. Mami de sefer Rebbe Lazar have reisha lab Rebbe Lazar tzricha. Perhaps I might have made a mistake, and I would have thought that if the reisha, if the Seifa is like Rebbe Lazar, then the Reisha is not Rebbe Lazar. Kamash Milan, we need Shmuel all 3 times. And really, the short version of this is that Shmuel is of the opinion that Ede Mesira Karti like Rebbe Lazar. Our Mishnah had stipulated, oddly, almost out of context, that there was this idea mipnei hatakana, that we allowed for a get to be written in template form because of a takana. And over the next amud or so, we'll see a number of different ideas as to why it is that we would ever consider such a thing, knowing that we have an aspect of lishma. So says the Gemara, my takana. What is the takana that we were employing over here that we should allow a get to be written in a template form? Amar Rabbi Yonasan, mipnei takanas sofer. This was a takana. This was something that the rabbis allowed for the sake of the sofer. The Rebbe Lazar he damar Edi Mesira Karti, and really it's within the camp of Rebbe Lazar of Edi Mesira, like we were just saying earlier, that our Mishnah, according to Shmuel, is talking about Edi Mesira, and really uvidin, who really it should have been the case that afilu tofes nami lo bichtov, even the non-essential portions of the get really should not have been written in the get. Mishum takana sofrim sharu rabbanon. But in order to make the lives of the sofer a little bit easier, we therefore were lenient to allow him to write a template. And if he were to write the template, it would, again, he'd be able to sell more quickly. When I walk into Kesher Stam, if I ever have to buy a ksuba, they're all pre-printed. They're all pre-printed. So the same thing could be true by the get. Really, it shouldn't be done. The chatchila really should be that even the tofes, even the non-essential portions of the get, should be written for the specific woman. Okay, Ladina, we know that it's only the Torah, only the essential parts of the get. So because of this, we're going to be makil, and we're going to allow the sofer to pre-print, to pre-write Gittin, provided that he leaves all the appropriate blank lines. We then saw the Shita, Rabbi Yehuda posel b'chulan. Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, he postled all of them. Why was he so strict? Why is it that he wouldn't allow any templating of a get, even the tofes, even the non-essential portions of a get? The Gemara explains, Gazar tofes atu toref, and Gazar shtaros atu Gittin. He didn't allow anything, not by the world of Gittin, not by the world of Malva, and not by the world of Mekach. He didn't allow any pre-written templates at all. Why? Well, there's 2 levels of this. First, he was gozer tofes atu Torah. He wouldn't allow for a sofer to write the non-essential parts of a get, the tofes, because of the concern that he may continue writing even the Torah, even the essential parts of the get, and the Torah has to be written lishma. So Rabbi Yehuda's first problem was with Gittin, that we were concerned that the non-essential pieces might blend into the essential pieces, and then the get is really fundamentally problematic. But the second layer as to why it is that Rabbi Yehuda was concerned about templating in the world of Malva and Mekach was because Gozar Shtaros atu Gittin. He was afraid that if we thought that it was permissible to template in the world of Malva and Mekach, that we might make a mistake and also be templating, meaning writing the tofes and leaving the blank lines, in regards to Gittin. And that double concern led him to just scratch our whole Mishnah and say that there are no leniencies whatsoever, and we do not allow any templating. And that means lemaisa, that every time somebody needs a shtar written up, either whether or not it's a get or if it's a shtar malve or a shtar mekach, in all cases, every last word of that has to be written fresh every single time. Very strict shita. And 5 lines from the bottom on Chavav Amaralef, the Gemara says, "Rabbi Lazar machshir b'chulan chutz megitei noshim." Rabbi Lazar was machshir in all the cases. He allowed for the templating to take place, both in regards to shtar malve and in regards to shtar mekach, but not in regards to gittin chutz megitei noshim. Why? Why is it that by gitei noshim we were concerned? Because tofes atu torev gazar, he was of the opinion that, yes, I'm concerned that if you start writing the tofes, the non-essential parts of the get, I'm afraid that you'll continue writing and you'll also write the Torah of the essential parts of the get, and that will create a character flaw in the get because it's missing the din of lishma. And while he was concerned of that, unlike his counterpart, Rabbi Yehuda, he was not concerned about shtaros. Shtaros atu gittin lo gazar. He was not concerned that if a person were to create templates for shtar mekach and for shtar malve, he was not concerned that that would then be brought back over to the world of gittin, and therefore Rebbe Lazar was lenient on the shtar malve and on the shtar mecher, that they were allowed to be templated. Those were permissible, but what he was concerned about was in regard to the get. What were the psukim that we were talking about over here? The things have to be done in a lishma fashion. It says the Gemara, the Gemara says, wait 1 second, you're trying to throw out the baby with the bathwater. When the pasuk was talking about that there's a din of lishma, that only applies to the Torah, to the essential parts of the get, but it doesn't apply to the non-essential parts of the get. So why would anybody say that you're not allowed to write the tofes of the get? So says the Gemara, because of this concern of v'chasav lo lishma, and the Rishonim here fill in the rest of the sentence, because of that, we're therefore in a position where we're not going to allow even the tofes, lest one begin the tofes, the non-essential parts of the get, and continue with the essential parts of the get, thereby invalidating the get. That brings us to the top of Chavav Amud Beis. We'll be going to the very last word on Chavav Amud Beis, and that is where we will wrap for the day. And the Gemara says, wait 1 second, we have Kasha, the Rebbe Lazar, we have a stira, and what's the problem? Rashi highlights what the question is. Reisha ukmas Rebbe Lazar umachshir lichtov tov segittin. In the Reisha, we have Rebbe Lazar, who is. So Rashi on the top of the page says what the question is. Rashi says, Reisha ukmas Rebbe Lazar umachshir lichtov tov segittin. He allows the writing of Gittin. V'seifa palig v'amar chutz megitei nashim. So between the Reisha and the Seifa, if they're both in the world of Rebbe Lazar, that's very confusing because the Reisha and the Seifa are not the same. The first Shita allows for the get to be written with templating, and the last Shita doesn't. So the Gemara says, you're right, Trei Tanoi Veli B'Dor Lazar. We don't know exactly how he would have held in this case. If we would have had a Gzeira of Tofes Atu Toref, would he have said that there is a concern that if you start with the non-essential pieces of the get, that you would then continue to write the essential pieces of the get, thereby invalidating the get? And that's a good point. So we just don't know. We don't know exactly what he held. Says the Gemara, Rib Shabtai Omer Chizkiya Mishum Kitata. The reason why we had a takana, we're going back to our original question of Ibnei takana. Why is it that our Mishnah said that there was a takana to be lenient in regards to templating a get? That first shita that we saw in our Mishnah, the one that we started with today. So the Gemara says in the name of Reb Shabtai, in the name of Chizkiya, that it's out of concern of Ketata, that there could be a fight. What type of fight are we talking about? Let's see. Chavav Amud Beis 3 lines down. Edi Chasima Karti. Really, we're within the camp, he says. Really, it's on our Mishnah, so this is a strongly deviant shita than the previous one who says we were all Rebbe Lazar. But maybe our Mishnah is really Rab Meirhi and Amar Edi Chasima Karti. And really, we don't care about Lishma and the get, we only care about Lishma and the Chasimas. Uvedin hu da'afilu Toref namin lechtov, and really, he could have written the Toref itself. But v'zimnin deshama le lesofer de kakasiv, that perhaps she will be walking through the shuk. She'll be walking past the store where the sofer sits, and she's going to overhear the sofer talking, and she's going to hear her own name and her husband's name, the savra ihu ka'amar le, and perhaps she'll be of the opinion that her husband went to the sofer and says, "Do me a favor, my wife doesn't know yet. Just script the get, and then she'll come home and say, "What's going on here? Did you go to the sofer and ask him to write a get? What is going on here?" So he's coming from the other direction where you could write the whole get in advance. I don't care. You could, sometimes you go to the store, you look for the you look for the keychains that have your name on it. You look for your name in your Bible. So they have Gittin that are written with the most common names. So really that should be mutter according to this approach, because if we're talking about Rav Meir, only the Chasima matters. So here the takana was to limit what you put in the get. We're making sure you leave some blank lines, lest a woman think that her husband was trying to divorce her. 6-7 lines down, Rav Chizda, Amar Avimi Mishum Takanas Agunos. He says the concern that we're talking about is because of agunos. And we don't know exactly what this means quite yet. Normally, with the usage of the word agunos is that we don't want a woman to be trapped in a marriage that she doesn't know how to get out of. But let's see how the Gemara explains this line of Avimi. And the Gemara says, Amri la Rav Meir, Amri la Rav Elazar. It's possible that this line of Rav Chizda in the name of Avimi is like the previous answer we just saw, which is that it's talking about Rav Meir. And we're saying that really we don't care about the Torah. Even the Torah can be written, even the Ikar parts can be written before we know exactly what belongs to, because only the Chastima matters. Some say that we're talking about in the camp of Rabbi Elazar, where the Torah is not allowed to be written in advance because it invalidates the get. Let's go through each possible approach. Amri la Rav Meir, according to the approach that this is possibly Rav Meir, how would we understand our Mishnah? He holds, as we know, the Amri Edei Chasima Karti, that really the Edei Chasima, the people, the only thing that we actually care about is the Chasima. And really, because he only cares about Lishma by the Chasima, we don't care if he writes the whole get in advance, no problem. And perhaps it is the case that there will be a fight with her. Not a fight like before where she walks through the shuk and overhears the sofer talking, but rather maybe just a regular husband-wife fight. And he'll get angry. And he'll give her a get the second they have a divorce. He says it's not okay to have a get that's all filled out. The takana is not to have a get that's all filled out. It's a rabbinic injunction against a husband who's about cost. And the second he gets in a fight with his wife, she buys the wrong thing, she spends money, she shouldn't, whatever the details are that bothered him. So then she'll divorce him just hand her the get out of the blue because he's angry, and that's not safe. Interestingly, here the word aguna is not being used in the way that we typically use it. We, again, as mentioned, we usually use an aguna, mishum iguna kilu barabanan, which we really learned about extensively in Maseches. We've seen it a number of times here, where we don't want a woman to be trapped in a marriage because we don't know where her husband is. Here, the word iguna is being used in a way where she's kind of cast away very quickly, and we don't want the husband to divorce his wife quickly. There should be a calming down period, and therefore, the mipnei hatakana here was not to create a get with all of the names filled out. It should only be used once a couple has decided to get a divorce, but we don't want a husband walking around with a document in his pocket that's divorce ready so that he can throw it at his wife the second he's angry. And Amri la Rebbe Lazar, some say that when Rav Chizda, in the name of Avimi, said that it's takanas agunos, that it is more of the classical case of agunos. How is this the case? Rebbe Lazar, maybe we are in the camp of Rebbe Lazar, the Amar Edim Estira Karti. As mentioned, Rebbe Lazar is of the opinion that we do care about the lishma component of the get, and at the very least, the Torah, the ikar parts of the ikar part of the get, the essential parts of the get, need to be written lishma. And really, ideally, we wouldn't even want the non-essential pieces of the get to be written. But sometimes the husband has to go out of town, below Ashkach Safra, and he's not able to find a sofer, Bishavik Lava Azil, and then he's going to leave town, and he's not going to write her a get, and then if he never comes home, then she's stuck. So it was much easier to have the majority of the get written, so all they would have to do is fill in names. You wouldn't need a sofer. All they'd have to do is write in his name and her name. So the mibnei takana was to prevent actual agunos, not a word that's being used for a different type of aguna. This is the real deal. We want the get to be easily filled in, and therefore we allow for the templating even within the camp of Rebbe Lazar. That brings us to the 2 dots, 1/3 of the way down on Chavav Amud Beis. We had said in our Mishnah that under the assumption that we do allow, like the Tanakama in our Mishnah, under the assumption that we allow for a get to have templating, one of the lines that needed to be left blank was the Zman, was the date. And said the Gemara, Kapasik Batani, it seems like we were pretty categorical about it. Our Mishnah made no distinctions. All it said is that you have to leave a makom for Zman, you have to leave a line, some blank line to write the date. And says the Gemara, what's implied from this categorical reference in our Mishnah that we have to leave a blank line for the date is lo shna hanisuin v'lo shna min ha'erusin, that it doesn't matter if the divorce is happening from full marriage or if the divorce is happening from just betrothal, just halachic engagement. But that's a problem. That's a problem. Bishlam min hanisuin. I could understand if what our Mishnah was talking about was nisuin, that they're fully married, because then bein lamanta amr mishum basachoso ika, bein lamanta amr mishum piri ika. That if the concern, as we have spoken about a number of blot ago, this was found on Daf Yud Zayin, so about 10 days ago, we spoke about the concern that if a man is married to his niece, which is halachically permissible, he's allowed to marry his brother's daughter. So under those circumstances, if she were to do something wrong, and maybe even if she cheated, and okay, so obviously that's an awful thing to happen, awful, but he still doesn't want his niece to die, so maybe he'll lie about the time they got divorced. So he'll say, no, we actually were divorced first, and then she cheated, so she doesn't get killed. And also, we sometimes have a need for a date at Mishum Piri, because we know that a husband, when a wife brings Nichse Melug into a marriage, she brings over some of the dowry, some funds that come from her family into the marriage, that the husband is allowed to benefit, not from the ikr, but he's allowed to benefit from the payros of those things. And we don't know when the line in the sand stops of his benefiting from payros without a date. So I could understand if somebody is married, I totally understand why it would be the case that the Mishnah doesn't distinguish between basachoso and between piri. I get it. Elamina erusin, but if you're going to say that our Mishnah means to also include divorce from a woman to whom you're only betrothed, that's a problem. Why is that a problem? Because I could understand that if a couple were to only be betrothed, erusin, and a woman cheats, and she's really not allowed to do that, so there too the date is helpful to determine whether or not she should be killed. But if what you're saying is that we're concerned about when the husband is no longer allowed to access payros, but during the betrothal phase, the husband never has access to payros. Arusa mi isla piri. If she's only engaged, there is no din of payros. So how can it be that our Mishnah doesn't distinguish between nisuin and erusin in regards to writing zman? Zman is not helpful according to the shita that we're concerned about pire if you're only be'erusin. If you're fully married, so then both concerns apply. That makes sense. But if you're not fully married, you're only halachically engaged. You have erusin, right, kedushin, but not nisuin. So then one of the shitas doesn't make sense. If you're be'erusin and your concern is pire, there are no payros during the period of erusin, so that doesn't make any sense. So the Gemara responds halfway down. Amar Rav Amra, ha milsa shamis minei deula. He heard something from Ula, the Amar Mishum Takana Asfalad, that there was some type of takana about a child. Velo Yadana, Mainihu, and I didn't know exactly what he was talking about. Then Kavan de Sham Isa Lahadatanya, once I heard the following brisa, everything cleared up. Omer says the Gemara, if a man says, Snu get la rusasi, leche she echnasena. This get you will give to the woman to whom I'm currently engaged, once I marry her, agar shena, and then she and I will be divorced, no get. That is not considered a get. Why is that not considered a get? The reason why it's not considered a get is gzera shema yomru gita kodem livna, because if they get married and she gets pregnant and has a baby, so then shema yomru gita kodem livna, that maybe she was divorced first and this child is out of wedlock. Hachanami, maybe in our case too, where there's a date, so maybe the concern of the gate by an arusa, the concern of a date by an arusa, and the reason why when we build a template for a get for an arusa that there's a date, even though there's no pire, there are no fruits for the husband to benefit from. It's not because of that, but it's because of this hachanami. Amar Reb Zera, how do we patkin? Amar Reb Zera, Amar Reb Abba Bar Shila, Amar Reb Hamnuna Staba, Amar Reb Ada Bar Ava, Amar Rav Halacha Ke Reb Elazar. Seems pretty categorical. We've spent a lot of time talking about Ede Mesira Karti and Ede Chasima Karti. Just a very brief review. Do we say Ede Mesira Karti, that the moment that the get is handed over to the woman, that is the moment that actually brings about krisus, that actually brings about severance between the husband and the wife? And therefore, we do care about the lishma components of the get, especially the toref, but even the tofes. Or do we hold like Reb Meir that Ede Chasima is Karti? We only care about the signatures, and we don't care if the get is written Lishma. We only care if the signatures are written Lishma, and therefore that would be a whole different track. So which one is it, Reb Elazar or Reb Meir? And this whole long line of Amoraim, going back all the way to the name of Rab, the earliest of the Amoraim, the Talmud of Rebbe himself, he says the halacha is Reb Elazar. Kari Rav Ale de Reb Elazar Tuvina de Chakimi. Rav says about Rabbi Elazar, he is the good ones of the wise ones. Obviously, some type of beautiful phrase. Rashi says Tuvina de Hakimi, 2/3 of the way down, maybe a little bit more than that, 3/4 of the way down. Meushar shebechachamim, the happiest, the greatest of whatever the right words are of the chachamim. It says the Gemara, fine, we hold like Rebbe Lazar, got it, and therefore there's an element of lishma, and therefore we need to be careful about how we preprint Gittin. Because if you do any templating, then are we worried about Tofus or are we not worried about Tofus? We had said on the very top line of this page that we weren't sure how Rebbe Lazar held about templating, because even though it's true we care about Lishma, but maybe we have a concern of Tofes Atu Torah, that if you write the non-essential parts, you may continue writing even the essential parts, thereby invalidating the get. So it says the Gemara, Ve'afilu b'shar shtaros nami, would we say that this is true even by shar shtaros outside of Gittin? Says the Gemara, Ve'amara papi mishmei de Rava, I Ashra Sadadaini, this verification process that took place in a bezdin of a document, the Michteve Mekame Delis Hadu Sade, Achasimas Yadaihu Psula, where the writing happened before the witnesses were present to sign it, that's considered Psula. Alma, says the Gemara, what we see from this case that is brought in the name of Rav Papi, in the name of Rava, Nichse Kishikra, that it appears like there's a dishonesty here because the shtar is being written, but the Eidim aren't there to sign it, so then it's not true yet. It hasn't come into fruition yet. Hachanami, perhaps in our Mishnah, when it comes to Sha'ar Shtaros, we understand Bibnei Takana why we'd want to be lenient with a get, but we don't have that same set of rules when it comes to the Shtaros. So we understand Rebbe Lazar is okay, we got it, we want to be lenient. I understand the various approaches we saw on the top of this page and on the bottom of Chavav Aleph as well. Got it. But with the other documents, that doesn't seem to apply. The Gemara says 10 lines or so from the bottom of the Lessa. Your concern about Mechde Kishikra is not a real concern. Where do we know this from? Midir Rav Nachman. Tamar Rav Nachman. Omer Haya Rav Meir. Afilu mitzao be'ashba. Rav Meir was of the opinion that even if a get was found in the garbage, chasma v'nasnu la kasher, and if it was then signed after it was removed from the garbage, again, all the names lined up, the husband is the husband's name, the wife's name is the wife's name, the chule, everything is perfect, and it's signed kasher. Ve'afilu Rabbanan, even the Rabbanan, even Rebbe Lazar, lo plige le de Rav Meir al begite nashim. The only machlokas over here is by gite nashim de ba'inan ksiva lishma. Rebbe Lazar is the only one who may argue here because we within a lishma. Aval b'shar shtaros lo, but by shar shtaros there is no concern. Why is there no concern about mechse kishikra? Says the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, shtar shelavabo pirao. If you have a document that you used for borrowing and that loan was paid back, eino chozer velovabo shekvar nimchal shibudam. You're not allowed to reuse the same document, even if the same exact loan repeats itself. You'll recall from our Mishnah that we started with today. The Mishnah said that if you do a shtar halva, and you're pre-templating, if that's allowed, so according to that, what spaces do we leave blank? So one of them was all the conditions, who the lova is, who the malva is, what the amount of money is, and what the date is. So let's say I'm repeating the same exact loan, same exact document. That doesn't work. Why? Because shekvar nimchal shibuda, because there was a shibud. The loan had a collateral that was attached to a piece of earth, to a property, whatever the case may be. But once the loan is paid back, the shibud is gone. The lien on a property that was the collateral for this agreement is gone, and therefore the document is not even worth the paper that it's written on. Now, what does the Gemara say? Taima, the reason why the document doesn't work is because the nimchal shibudo. Aval mishum shikra lo chayshinan. We're not worried about sheker, even though there is something that doesn't smell right because this document was already used. But doesn't matter. That wasn't the concern. So we see that even within the camp of Rebbe Lazar, that mechse kishikra is not a concern. We'll stop right here, and Yirtzeh Hashem will pick up tomorrow on the top of Chav Zayin. Wishing you all a beautiful day.